Now before we start, I'd like to make a quick shout out to Kush Renata because he or she gave me 1,250 gold for my birthday. So thanks dude or dudette, but you're awesome. Woohoo! That was so lame. So for today's video, I was watching a special on Top Gear featuring a Challenger 2 tank versus a Range Rover SUV if you will. But I loved cars when I was growing up as well as tanks, but this video is very intriguing when I first saw it. But the initial message I got from Jeremy Clarkson, the main host of the show, is very intriguing. Now, we all know if you watch Top Gear that Jeremy Clarkson is not a big fan of American stuff other than the muscle cars, but that's a whole different story. But watch this clip and you'll see what intrigues me. So here's the clip.
This is a Challenger 2 tank. It has a 12-cylinder diesel engine which produces 1,200 horsepower, and that's enough for a top speed of nearly 40 miles an hour. Not bad for something which weighs 62 tons.
The thing I'm most interested in, though, is the big gun, which, as you can see, is rifled for greater accuracy. Not like those smoothbore American ones that just hit something over there.
Whoa, Mr. Clarkson. I have to stop you right there. But I think he is comparing the Challenger 2 to the Abrams tank. Now, coming from an American point of view, so this might sound a little biased, but I actually like the Abrams tank. It is one of the most iconic image of American weaponry, like the M16 rifle. So like the rifle, the Abrams also have not a good reputation as the most reliable tank, but it is pretty iconic, so I like it. So it's still a pretty goddamn good looking tank. So I'm not saying the Challenger 2 is a bad looking tank, I'm just saying Abrams is not that far behind or not that far forward or stuff like that. So it's just on the same fucking level. Jesus Christ. But yeah, so the main question that's presented with his statement is that which gun barrel is better, smoothbore or rifle gun barrel? Now, before we start this debate, I want you to know that the only tanks, main battle tanks, that's currently in use, which have rifle gun barrels, are the British, the Challenger 2, as well as the Indian tank. I don't know what that tank name is. The Agna? I forgot the name. But those are the only two tanks that use rifle gun barrels. The rest of the main battle tanks throughout the world use smoothbore, like the Abrams, the Leopard 2, the T-90, the Russians, the Type 99, I think, or 90, Type 90 or Type 99, one of which. But most other nations use smoothbore gun barrels. Also note, the gun on the Abrams is a 120mm Rheinmetall made L55 or L44 I think, but that's a Germany made gun. It's not American, so get your facts straight, alright? It's not American. So the Leopard 2 used the same gun as well as the Abrams. So comparing the British to American that way is kind of not fair, alright? But here is the main concern between which is better, the smoothbore or the rifle gun barrels. So here we go. Now before we start with the information, I just want to let you know that I majored in chemical engineering, not mechanical engineering, so go easy on me if I have faulty math or some info that's wrong, so be gentle about it, alright? But rifling. So the main difference between a rifle gun barrel and a smoothbore gun barrel is the little grooves you see here inside the gun barrel. So what does rifling do? Well, rifling helps impart a spin onto the fired projectile to gyroscopically stabilize it in mid-flight. So if you saw my introduction to this video, the little War Thunder IS-2 gun barrel thing, you can see the rifling within the video, as well as how the tank shell spins, the 122mm shell spins in midair. That actually helps the shell be more accurate because it's gyroscopically stabilized in midair while hitting the target. So it's a lot of math, and you know, math are interesting if it doesn't get boringly overused, I guess. But yeah, so rifling are helix-shaped patterns in the gun barrel, so that's pretty cool. But it helps with the spin of the tank shell when you're firing it. Whereas if you fire from a smoothbore, the shell just doesn't spin, it just travels. So it's basically like lobbing a shell. Now a good analogy to this is basically a musket to the current battle rifles. So traditionally in the 1700s, you have a musket which fires a round lead ball at somebody. The gun barrel is not rifled, so the rifling helps with the accuracy of the gun. Now without rifling, the musket is not that accurate. That's why you see a lot of people with a bunch of muskets standing around, lying and just all shooting with volley fire at somebody else. So that's how inaccurate without rifling. Now rifling was introduced in the 1500s, but nobody actually uses it until the 1900s. So yeah, it takes a long time for that to catch up, but it is a very painful process of carving grooves into the gun barrel because it's pretty hard. You must have equally distributed gun rifling, otherwise you're just messing up the inside of the gun barrel, obviously. So you have to be very unison or ubiquitous with the carving of the inside of the gun barrel, and that gets very complicated. I won't talk about it, but alright. Now, all rifling of a gun barrel are determined by a twist rate. Now, what the twist rate means is that how long does the pattern reach 360 degrees after leaving the muzzle or even the breech of a gun. So that determines how long for the rotation of the helix pattern. Now, originally, lead balls that's used on the pistol, the Queen Anne pistol, like, I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean, if you will, it has very low twist rate, about one rotation of the helix pattern in 122 centimeters. So that's pretty low of a carving. So it's almost smooth or almost smooth carve. Now for the 5.56 round for the M16 rifle, you have one rotation in 20 centimeters, 17.78 centimeters for the M16A2 rifle. So that's pretty interesting. Now currently, Flechetti rounds, which is basically dart rounds, needs a very high twist rate, which is very practically impossible for current mechanical parts to carve it. So that's pretty high. I think it's about one rotation in 5 centimeters. So you have to carve the crap out of the gun barrel in order to reach that, which is very, very hard and impractical most of the time. So that's how rifling works, to understand rifling. Now, why am I concerned about the Flechetti round? Now, I'll explain that in the round discussion, but Flechetti is basically a dart-shaped round which has higher penetration than the 5.56 round. So it goes through armor easier. But yeah, I'll talk about it later. So just notice this fact. So Flechetti rounds needs very high twist rate, and it is very important for current ammo types. So understand that, or keep that in mind. But large rounds are easier to stabilize due to gyroscopic inertia. So basically, if you have a 155mm shell, that shell is pretty much easier to stabilize because how heavy it is in midair, instead of stabilizing a 5.56 round from a gun or from a 76mm round. So yeah, long rounds are also harder to stabilize due to most back-heavy shells. So basically, if you imagine a bullet, if you will, the bullet is heavier on the end than on the front of the shell, so it tends to lob with a lever effect. So imagine if you have this bar thing, and it will turn to lever up and down on each side if you're firing a long round. So yeah, alright, but rifling helps with the stabilization of this round. So basically, if you have a low twist rate, the shell will spin back and forth, so sidewise. So the shell will spin sidewise and tumble afterwards, so you're not that accurate. With a high twist rate, the barrel of the gun will wear down pretty quick, and the shell might even have the jacket ruptured, so the shell might even disintegrate in midair. But alright, also there's unequal mass distribution and upon impact, as well as unequal impact angles and other crap. So yeah, rifling is very important in order to maintain accuracy. Now hopefully I'm still keeping you guys awake. Alright, so try to stay awake. So that's what rifling is. Now I have to talk about which one is better, smoothbore or rifling. So alright, next slide. I'll try to keep this as non-lecture like or non-monotone like as I possibly can. So alright, So rifling does help with accuracy, but only on derpy shell design. So by derpy, I mean it's like the bullet design. You have heavy lead top or pointed top, I guess, as well as propeller in the back. So it's pretty simple of a design. So alright. But rifling is very counterintuitive if the shell can be stabilized by a fin. So like the APFSDS, which is basically fin stabilized discarding sabot rounds, like this one. So basically you have a fin onto the flechetti round, and this will help penetrate. So if you spin this round with the rifling of the gun, the spin will actually cause the fin to be unstabilized, so overspinning the round, causing the shell to lose accuracy as well as weird impact angles with the pointed end. So yeah, alright. But derpy shells are made between 1860s and the 1950s, so it is commonly used between this time. And it is like the old bullet shells, so it's like a bullet. That's the main concern. Alright, so it is based around the bullet, like APCR, or the APCDE, CPC, whatever, the armor piercing cap, ballistic cap. So you can see the different type of shells. So initially you start out with armor piercing, then armor piercing cap, which helps with the penetration, then ballistic cap and blah blah blah. And you can see APCR is basically heavier metal based shell. So alright, but yeah, derpy shells are not that good when it comes to thickness of the armor as well as slope armor. So based on the Russian tanks, as you saw with the IS-6 or the IS-3, that has a lot of slope armor, and shells are pretty much ineffective when it comes to slope armor, as well as space armor, because space armor will deflect the shell trajectory when it hits the armor. So yeah, that's pretty rough. Now technology with armor also increased with composite armor, as well as reactive or explosive reactive or non-explosive reactive armor. So yeah, your derpy shells won't penetrate high armor targets that have composite armor base. Now I'll explain in a new Tank 101 video about armor design, but just note that composite armor and reactive armor does not depend on the thickness of the armor, but actually composite, like what's inside the armor, such as glass or ceramics or other crap. So armor technology is actually better than just a plate of metal that's helping the tank stop a bullet or stop a tank shell. So there's advancement in armor technology too. So there's a new shell design designed to penetrate hard armors, and that's called kinetic energy penetrating shells. So basically it's like a flechetti. So from the previous slide, if you remember, flechetti are dart-like warheads designed to penetrate high armor. Now flechetti doesn't help with the rifling, because rifling will make the balance of the shell, the little arrow thing, unbalanced when it's already balanced by the fins. So it needs high muzzle velocity combined with concentrated force to beat conventional chemical energy shells. So alright, just know that the APCR, which is basically like this, as well as the AP FSDS, remembering this is crap, is better against tank armor than the normal APCR or the normal AP shells. So you need this, but rifling does not help with this shell. So yeah. Alright, next slide. Hopefully I'm not boring you. So hopefully this is the last slide, so please stay awake. But rifling does help with accuracy, only on derpy shells. So in the end, yeah, rifling is not useful for modern tank shells, because modern tank shells are based around these flechetti made impact. So it has fins on the flechetti, and it will stabilize itself with the fins, so you don't have to use the rifling. Now rifling would be more tedious to maintain because it constantly wears down the gun barrel, so after each shot. So you can see on the 122mm round, 1 second. So basically if you look at this picture, where the hell did I put that picture? So here it is. But here is a 122mm round from the Russians with the rifling. Now it is like the initial intro to this video, but you can see the scratch marks on the grooves of this this shell. This is made by the rifling. Now constant wear by firing more shells from the gun means that you have to actually maintain the gun barrel by scratching or carving new grooves into the rifling, or just smooth out other stuff. So it's a tedious pain, whereas smoothbore guns doesn't have to maintain as much. So that's the main difference between using a lot of those composite rigid flechette based rounds with rifling gun barrels. So yeah, it's gonna be rough, but alright. Also note that the chief advantage of the smoothbore gun design are the greater suitability for the fin stabilized armor ammunition. So that was a long word. And the greater reduced barrel wear compared to a rifle gun barrel design. So alright, I type a lot. But unless there's more advanced derpy shells designs that could penetrate advanced armor, like composite armor or reactive explosive armor, whatever you call it. So yeah, derpy shells designs are not that good, and rifling of the gun barrel is very unnecessary labor and labor intensive when you're doing it. So yeah, you don't really need rifling with the advanced shell design. So alright. But rifling is still good for tanks that use high explosive anti-tank or HESH rounds, or the HEP, high explosive plastic for Americans, if you will. So those shells now just mainly used against fortifications or infantry. You don't actually use high explosive anti-tank anymore against like tanks or other armored targets because they have composite armor. And composite armor acts like space armor against heat shells. So that sucks, but you mostly use it on like bunkers or buildings to blow people out of them. But alright. Also, you cannot really fire anti-tank guided missiles like those Russian missile based with a T-72B or T-80 or T-90. So yeah, you cannot fire missiles out of your tank barrel with a rifle. So that's gonna suck. But yeah, I think only the Russians fire, as well as the Chinese, fire missiles out of the gun barrel, the 125mm gun barrel. But that's pretty fucking crazy. So it's laser guided too, but that's nuts. Also, smoothbore could fire the heat and HESH shell just as well, but just with less accuracy. That goes for the impact, which is basically for slow moving air targets like helicopters. So the impact is basically like a heat shell. So you're just shooting that helicopter with a heat shell. That's pretty much it. As well as can shells. Now can shells are basically canisters that's filled with tungsten balls. And this shell acts like a shotgun shell for a tank. Basically just blow away people. Like a mass amounts of people and just shotgun blast. Like a giant shotgun blast shell. Or against buildings, that helps too. But this is nuts. So alright. But why does the British as well as the Indian troops use rifle gun barrel design? Mostly because they like their HESH shells. That's what I gather, mostly. But there were designs to transfer the Challenger 2 to use smoothbore guns, like the Rheinmetall made 120mm gun, the L55. But yeah, I think it's money cost to rework every Challenger tank from a rifle gun to a smoothbore gun, but it's their politics and other crap. So alright, but here's some extra facts. But did you know that Germany actually made modern sabots, which is basically armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot. So sabot is basically like the little clamp that holds the dart. So they actually made that dart design way back in World War II to increase the altitude of their AA guns. So that's pretty interesting. Also, the T-54 were originally started out with a 100mm rifle gun until the M60 patents were introduced, and the patents were made with composite armor. So yeah, the rifle guns were having trouble using the derpy 100mm shells against composite armor. So basically, yeah, the T-62s were introduced with smoothbore 115mm to combat the M60 patents, as well as the T-64s with extensive composite armor design called the Combination K. But started out in the early 60s or mid 60s, the composite armor comes into play, and normal derpy shells with the APHE or whatever you call it, those were kind of crappy against those composite armor and cannot penetrate or destroy any other tanks. So basically, yeah, you were stuck. Now in tank warfare, initial targets is basically targets that have the greatest threat, like helicopter design. So like the Apache helicopter computer, tank crews were trained to take out the most dangerous targets first before taking out other targets. So basically, like video games, when you're playing a tank, you must take out tanks that actually, other tanks that actually could hurt you as well as RPG troops. So basically, you have to take them out before you shoot down little mini soldiers with little AK-47s, obviously. So people with AK-47s and normal grenades cannot possibly hurt you, whereas other tanks and RPG troops will likely hurt you. So you have to have target priority. So basically, if you cannot kill tanks, basically you're stuck in the middle of the battlefield. So you need to kill other tanks first before you can target like troops in buildings and stuff like that. So that's why people want to develop tanks with more powerful guns to penetrate other armors. So that's why tank design. But all right. Jesus, that was a lot of information. Hope you guys are still awake, but now you know a little bit more about smoothbore and rifle gun barrels. So basically, in the end, smoothbore helps firing the AP DS, DSFS, whatever shell that thing is, with the machete and the sabot. So they're firing shells that actually could penetrate armored targets, whereas the rifle guns are less reliable with the, the AP, FS, DS, other shit. So rifle gun barrels need more work to maintain, as well as less accuracy when firing high penetrating kinetic energy penetrators, if you will. But it's still not a bad design. It's old design because people in World War II were using it, like on the IS-2 or the Shermans. So all right, or the Tiger tanks, the 88mm L56, I think. But all right, it's not a bad gun design. It's just British people like their head shell. So in the end, Mr. Jeremy Clarkson should basically stick with cars. So, and get your facts straight if you want to talk about tanks, and do some research like I did. Now, I did like a fuck ton of research for this, and it was interesting, but it took a lot of time. So yeah, stuff you wonder about, like tank shells and trajectories and stuff like that, and other crap based on mechanics and physics and math and smart stuff and other shit. So but whatever. So Mr. Clarkson, stick with cars, don't do tanks. Stick that to like other people to do tanks, I guess. Like the chieftain, yeah, he does tanks. He's pretty smart. So all right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video, but lots of information, so hope you guys are still awake. But thank you guys for watching, and stick through it. But this is still a pretty interesting topic, smoothbore versus rifle gun barrel. So yeah, only the British and the Indian tank. I still disturbed about the rifle gun barrel. 1 second, I need to check this out. Gun barrel. But only the Indian tanks, as well as the Challenger tank, use the rifle gun barrel. Whereas any other tanks like the Leopard 2 or the Abrams or the the Type 99 or the WZ-123, I think, those use smoothbore. Yeah, what the hell's the tank gun? I need to search up tank gun, so you can see the rifling. Alright, so basically this is improv. This is improv. I'm trying to look at tanks that use smoothbore. Also note that the BMP-1 used a smoothbore gun and it could fire missiles out of it. So basically it's like, hell, we can fire missiles out of it. Why the hell do you need high explosive anti-tank if you can have a fucking missile? So, alright. But, I don't know. There are only 2 tanks that use rifle guns. The Challenger? I know this information. I forgot the Indian tank name. I totally forget. I'm sorry. Operational history. It's a lot of information on the oh, here it is. The Anduran. I thought it's an Indian-made tank based on the Challenger, I think. I don't know. I never saw this tank in action, but this tank has a rifle gun barrel, so it still fires head shells like the Indian or like the British. So alright, but those are the only 2 tanks that has rifle gun barrels. We have the Leopard 2 that has a smoothbore, whereas you have the Makrova that has a smoothbore. I don't know how to spell Makrova. Makrova. I don't know how to spell Makrova. But in the end, hopefully you learn a little bit more about gun barrel types and whatnot. But thank you guys for watching, and comment below what you don't understand about math and tank barrel physics and other crap. But it is still pretty interesting, like the log. Now this is more math based than the log, obviously, but still pretty interesting. But thank you guys for watching, and comment, rate, subscribe. That will always help me out. Also, subscribe to my channel for more leak videos, not actual technical info about tanks. This is actually more real life concepts about tanks instead of tank games and stuff like that. But alright, but thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this video and a bunch of information, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
To die.